Hey members, Lacey here. This is Beginner's Corner with roping.com. We get a lot of questions from beginner ropers, and while our coaches are more than willing and happy to answer your questions, I know that some of you guys need those questions answered right away. So every week I'm going to be going through and doing a little tip of the week for our Beginner's Corner, which we are in the process of building currently, so bear with us. So this is mostly for beginner ropers, but advanced and intermediate ropers can definitely come and take some of these tips as well. I know some of you guys may be thinking like, hey, she's only a number 4 header, why should I listen to her? Well, rest assured that while I'm a number 4, a lot of that has to do with the fact that I haven't been able to travel up and down the road a whole lot due to time mostly. However, I have had the opportunity and I've been very blessed in the fact that I've grown up around professional team ropers as well as some very, very, very excellent horsemen who've taught me a lot along the way. So I would like to just share those tips with you. Whether you want to listen to them or not, that's obviously your prerogative, but they're here if you need them. And I'm happy to answer any of your guys' questions if you need help. So one of the questions that I recently received in an email was from a gentleman asking about rope care and when I knew a rope was too worn out to use anymore. So I'd like to just kind of go through the lifespan of a rope with you and talk a little bit about my personal rope care regimen and how I like to take care of my ropes. Ropes are an investment as much as your horse or your truck or your trailer or anything else. They may not be as expensive, but if you add up how many ropes how much you spend on ropes throughout your life as a team roper, you're going to be surprised you spend a lot of money on ropes. So at $35 to $45 a pop, you really want to take care of these. I like to order my ropes online. I like them to come to me pretty much straight from the factory and unswung by another person. The reason why I don't like anybody else to swing them before I get my hands on them is because everybody swings a little bit different, and I feel like brand new ropes have a little bit of a memory, and when somebody else swings it before you do, you can really feel it, and the rope just doesn't feel the same. So I like to break them in myself. I order 5 or 6 ropes at a time. I'll pull 2 brand new ropes out of the box, and I'm going to leave those other 4 in the box. I'm going to store them in the box, leave them in a cool, dry place in my house, preferably a dark spot out of the sunlight, and I'm going to leave them laying flat like this. This is going to ensure that when I pull them out of the box, they're still going to feel brand new, and they're not going to be crusty or weathered or old or anything like that, as if you just left them in your pickup or you threw them in the trailer or whatever. So with the 2 new ropes that I pull out, I like to keep, I have several ropes that are already broken that I'm using. I have one that's kind of a colder weather rope, and I have one that's good for hot weather, and these are going to be ropes that I've roped several steers with already that still feel really, really good but aren't worn out. And then I'm going to break in a couple of new ones and have them on hand ready just in case one doesn't feel good, or I burn it up, or I rope a couple of necks, or, if you're a healer, if you leg one, whatever. When I get a brand new rope out, I like to take the twisty ties off. I like to set them aside because I like to use them later. I'm weird like that. I like to keep my twisty ties. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stretch this rope. And the way I like to do that personally is I like to find a post that's about that big around. I don't like a post that's too small, and I definitely don't like one that's square. I like it to be round. I'm going to slip my rope over the top of it, and I'm going to go ahead and get on my horse, and I'm going to dally about halfway down that rope, and I'm just going to lean my horse back, come nice and tight. Make sure you're on a nice horse. Be aware of your surroundings. This is something it can be dangerous if you don't do it right. So just be very careful and make sure you know your horse in this situation. I like to dally up. I like to back my horse up, come tight. I like to back him up again and really put a good stretch on it. Then I like to undally and go a little bit further down my rope towards the end, towards the tail. And then I like to dally. I like to do that again. I do that several times until I know I've got a nice good stretch on my rope and I can see it. You can kind of flip your rope like this, and it's going to be pretty limber. For headers, for healers, you're going to be using a harder lay, so of course it's not going to be limber, but you will know when that stretch is kind of out, when you've got that spring out of it a little bit. I don't like to rope with a brand new rope in competition that hasn't been stretched, and here's why. I feel like they have a lot of spring to them, so when I swing them, they have a lot of body, too much body, and I feel like I'm always trying to catch up with my swing because they have so much body, and then when you throw it around the horn, sometimes it kind of feels like it wants to curl off of there and wave off on you or whatever. So I really like to put a good stretch on it. when I take it off the post, I like to go ahead and find a nice, clean, dry, sandy spot. And this is personal preference for me. This isn't, I'm not saying this is the right way or the wrong way to do this. This is the way that I prefer to do it. I'm going to find a nice, clean, dry, sandy spot. And I'm just going to flip my rope around a few times. Make sure that it gets a nice coating of dust on it. And that just keeps it sliding. It keeps it feeding really well for me and sliding through my hand really nicely. Then with my brand new rope, I'm going to be at practice, obviously. I don't, like I said before, I don't like to rope with a brand new rope in competition. I feel like that's counterproductive. But when I'm at practice, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rope a few head with my brand new rope. So obviously I always want to try to catch them around the horns. And that's because you don't want to rope one around the neck with your brand new rope, because that's going to kind of put some backswing in it, put a little twist in it, kink in it that you don't really want. But obviously sometimes that just can't be helped. Like, we're not perfect. We're not perfect human beings, so you're going to catch some necks with it. No sweat. You can save that rope still. It still can be good, I promise. So I try to rope 3 or 4 good steers with it, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to coil it back up pretty close to the same way that it came to me, and I'm going to put the twisty ties back on, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this in my rope bag. This is a rope bag that I got in 2009 from the Reno Rodeo All Girl. I like it because it has several compartments in it. As you can see, I don't have any ropes in it right now. That's kind of the way I like to keep it. I keep 3 or 4 ropes in it only. I know some people who have 25 ropes in their rope bag, and every time they go to get one out, they pull out 18 different ropes, and they're tangled up and it's a mess, and I'm just not that way. I like everything clean and nice and neat. And so after my rope is coiled back up and I have my twisty ties on it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick it in one of those compartments. Another thing that I don't like to do, that a lot of people do like to do, and that's fine, that's preference, I don't like to hang my rope bag. I like to lay it flat. And the reason being is I feel like when you hang it, you're putting pressure on the bottom of your rope, and that's going to make your rope more oval shaped rather than round. I like to keep my rope nice and round. So I tend to like to lay it flat, and I don't like to stack anything on top of it because I don't like it to get any weird shapes to it. I like it to stay nice all the time. So I will usually keep my rope bag either flat on the ground while I'm in the practice pen, or if I'm at a jackpot, I usually don't carry my rope bag with me. I know some people do. That's just not my thing. If I need to go get a rope, then I'll go get a rope if I can. I do like to leave it flat on the tack room floor of my trailer, or flat in the nose of my trailer, flat on the back seat of the pickup, whatever, just as long as it's flat. All right, I'm going to go ahead and talk to you guys a little bit about a rope that I've used some. This is I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to name any brand names because I'm not actually sponsored, so there's no reason for me to tell you necessarily which ropes I use. If you do have questions about the ropes I use or my personal preferences, I'll be happy to tell you about them, but just know that everybody is different and everybody swings a little different. So, what feels good to you might not feel good to me, and vice versa. So, this is a rope that I've roped 50 or 60 head with, and as you guys can see, it's in really good shape. There's not a lot of fuzz on this rope, and fuzz develops after you've roped a lot of cattle with it. It's been drugged through the dirt a bunch of times, whatever. So it'll start to fuzz up, and then it won't feed very well. This rope I've roped a lot of cattle with already, and honestly, this is a rope that I broke in last fall, and as you can see, it's still in really good shape. I like to really play with my ropes a lot and keep them nice and limber, and the best way for you to tell whether or not a rope still feels good to you is just to swing it, honestly. And so when I have a rope that I haven't swung in a while, I'm going to break it out, and I'm just going to swing it a little bit and see how it feels. If it feeds really good and it feels really good, then that's the one I'm going to rope with. I know a lot of people don't like to let their rope drag in the arena, and especially in practice, I see a lot of people who will rope their steers and headers, especially. Heelers, sometimes you don't have a choice if you leg one or whatever, and a lot of times your rope will come off if you don't leg one. If you catch 2 feet, it's going to come off, obviously, and you don't have to let your rope drag down the pin. But headers, I know a lot of people don't like to let their rope drag. I see a lot of guys, they rope their steer and then they lope their horse down the pin to try to keep their rope off the ground. I had a guy tell me one time, because I have a tendency to rope my steer dally go left, and when my heeler's done roping, I'll let my rope go. and I'll walk my horse down the pen. I had a guy tell me one time, that's a good way to burn up a bunch of ropes or ruin a bunch of ropes. And I told him, I'd rather ruin a bunch of ropes than ruin a good horse. I don't think, running my horse to death is something that I want to do. I'd rather pay $40 for a rope than ruin my horse. So that's a personal preference for me, what you want to do with your ropes. If you want to let them drag, or if you want to hold them up out of the sand, that's your prerogative. That's just how I feel about it. A little dirt really never hurt anybody. I've never had my ropes get too burned up just from the dirt necessarily, and I kind of like the way they feel when they have a little bit of sand on them anyway. But moving on, when I'm done with my rope for the day, I will go ahead and I'll throw it out, and I'm going to coil it up. And I like a good medium-sized coil, and I like my coils to all be the same size, and I like my loop to be right in there in the same size too. And I put it just like this so that it's all the same size. My rope is all nice and uniform, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick that in my rope bag as well. I know a lot of guys who, especially at their houses, they're going to leave their rope just like this, and they're just going to lay it on the ground, and they're going to walk in their house and leave it out there, and they can pick it up the next day. That's not my style. I don't like a rope that's been sitting in the sun. I feel like it makes them feel terrible. It makes them stiff, and they just don't feel good anymore. So I really take care of my ropes the best that I can. Now, when a rope starts getting fluffed up, getting fuzz on it, or if you miss a dally and you get a bunch of black rubber on it and it starts getting burned up, then I'm going to retire that rope to the practice pin. And by practice pin, I don't mean the practice pin where you're roping live cattle. I like to use a pretty good rope to rope live cattle because I like my practice runs to feel exactly like my competition runs. I feel like if you're going to practice, then you need to practice as if you're making real runs, and you need to practice for every scenario. So I like to make sure that I'm using a good rope for practice. By practice with my bad ropes, I mean roping the sled or the mechanical steer, roping the dummy, stuff like that. If a rope is in really bad shape, if I've necked one a bunch of times, or if it has bad backswing or something, I will literally retire that rope and just use it to log a log around for my horse or whatever, or I'll just throw them in the garage. Sometimes I use them for different projects around the house. You can even sell those ropes if you want to. I know people that buy them for crafting and things like that. So those are my rope tips for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below this video. And we're going to be doing these Beginner's Corner every week or every other week. So I look forward to bringing you more tips and tricks. And from all of us at roping.com, we hope you have a blessed day.